The person I'm closest to in my family is definitely my mum, Kate. We've always got on and we hardly ever fall out. I know that's unusual. She's really outgoing and sociable. She's always going out with friends and colleagues. Everyone thinks she's good fun. I look up to her because she's so hardworking. She never sits still, and she works long hours. She can be a bit impatient, though. She gets annoyed when her colleagues aren't as efficient as her. I take after her in that. I'm impatient too. And she's oversensitive, often getting offended for seemingly no reason.
2. My cousin Kieran and I grew up together. We were inseparable. He was so creative. He'd always think of new games we could play and make up these stories to make me laugh. I was constantly amazed by his open-mindedness as well. He was never judgmental. I wish I could be like that. Unfortunately, we grew apart, slowly but surely, and by the time we went to uni, we weren't in touch anymore. I haven't seen him for years. It's really sad. I would blame it partly on the fact that he's not very reliable. So, for example, if I email him, he won't respond. I'm not sure what he's up to these days.
3.
I know this is a cliché, but I don't get on with my in-laws, especially my mother-in-law, Jane. She's so nosy, always wanting to know what we're doing and who we're with, and she's terribly blunt, which means she quite often upsets us with things she comes out with. And then she can be quite stingy. When we go out for a meal with her and my father-in-law, she never offers to pay, even though they're much better off than us. I must say, though, she's extremely clever, and I do respect her for that. She set up her own business 5 years ago, and it's gone from strength to strength. She's so self-assured and ambitious too, which I suppose is why she's so successful in business. Tell me something about your family.
Although I live abroad now, my mum's family is from Paris and my dad's family is from Toulouse, so I'm from a very French family. I would say I come from quite a small family, really. For example, I just have one older sister and 4 cousins, but it's true that my extended family is fairly big.
What do you like doing most with your family?
I like having nice long meals with good food and good wine, and a few jokes for dessert.
Who are you close to in your family?
In my family? Well, I'm close to my Uncle Jacques. He's a chef. He's hilarious, always telling jokes, and he's very enthusiastic about everything he does. We spent a lot of time together when I was growing up. In fact, he helped to bring me up.
In what way is your family important to you?
My family is everything to me. They are my best friends. They support me when things aren't going well, and when things are going well. I know they'll always be there for me, no matter what.
One of my best friends is a guy called Raoul. I met him at uni in Barcelona, where we were in the same study group. When was that? I suppose it was over 10 years ago now, so yes, we've known each other for a good decade. We got to know each other on the tennis courts because the first few days of our course were so boring that we both decided we'd be better off outside playing tennis. What kind of person is he? Well, he's very active, a sporty type, involved in hiking and mountain biking, a bit of an adrenaline junkie. He's also a very determined person. When he gets into something, he gives 100%. And he changes passions often. That makes him a bit of a self-absorbed person, actually, which I'd say is a drawback. And I think he comes across as full of himself sometimes. A bit too sure of his own opinions. As for why I like him, well, he's actually quite different from me. At uni, He'd often suggest doing something and I'd go along with it, and because I'm laid back, I never felt overwhelmed by him. We've never fallen out or anything.
How often do you see your friend?
Well, because we live in different countries, we don't see each other that often, but we try to catch up on a fairly regular basis, say 3 times a year.
In what ways have families changed in the last 100 years?
In Western countries, I would say families have become more widely dispersed and less close. People travel more and then end up living far away from their families. I think this is a shame because it means there is a breakdown of communities. I also think that because families are spread over a wider geographical area, elderly people tend to be forgotten and usually live on their own.
Should we rely heavily on our families, or is it better to try to be independent?
People seem to like living independently from each other these days, but I do wonder if that's the best way. Relying on people is seen as a weakness by some, I think. However, having family nearby is invaluable when you have children, in my opinion. Who else can be called on to babysit at a moment's notice?
The elderly are sometimes considered the wisest members of society. What do you think we can learn from them?
Oh, an immense amount. They're our living link with the past, of a family, a region, a country. They're the keepers of local traditions, for example, and they provide a sense of identity to younger generations.
Sample answers.
What do you expect from a good friend?
For me, a good friend has to be reliable. I can't stand being stood up or having my emails and texts ignored. As well as that, a friend should be someone you can have good fun with. There are many things in life to be serious about, but friendship shouldn't be one of them. I also believe that opposites attract, in friendships just as in romance, so a good friend will most likely be very different from you in many ways.
Are friends as important to you as family?
No, I wouldn't say so. Friends come and go, but family are always there, whether you like it or not. You can even be rude to your family, not that it's advisable, of course, and they will forgive you. But sometimes you've known a friend for so long, they can become like a family member. You can really be yourself with them, and you may even argue quite often, like siblings do.
Do you think friendships change as we get older?
Well, I definitely find that I have less in common with some friends than I used to. I sometimes wonder what we used to find to talk about. And so you often grow apart from old school friends or old colleagues. The people I feel I have most in common with are friends I met at university. I'm not sure why, but we somehow always have lots to talk about.
Track 8.
It's by far my favourite sport to watch. I love the excitement that builds up as the match progresses, with the fans cheering and chanting. There's always an amazing atmosphere. My team usually loses, it has to be said, although last week they drew. When they play away, I always try to go and support them, and I've got the latest kit, but they're getting more and more expensive, so I may have to stop buying them. I think the clubs take advantage of fans' loyalty to push up the prices. Team sports are a fantastic way for young people to improve their fitness. I coach a junior team at the weekend. We don't train in a stadium, of course, just on a pitch in our local park. I was really delighted last week when our youngest player scored the winning goal with a beautiful header. I think he might prove to be a real up-and-coming talent.
What do you do to keep fit?
I go to the gym twice a week. I don't really enjoy it, to be honest, but it's an easy way to keep fit. I mainly do cardiovascular exercises rather than muscle building.
Are you good at sport?
Not really, but I try my best. I prefer individual sports to team sports, because if I do badly in a team game, I always feel I'm letting everyone down.
What sports do you play?
I go kite surfing sometimes. I enjoy it because it's so exhilarating. I can't go often though, because there's rarely enough wind where I live. I might take up another water sport instead.
What is the most popular sport in your country?
I'd say the most popular sport is football, as in most countries. Most people have a favourite team who they support through thick and thin. The teams are often English ones, and Manchester United is the most well-known.
Track 13. I'd like to talk about the most exciting tennis match I've ever seen. It was about 6 years ago, just outside Bordeaux, in France, and it was the boys' final of a junior championship. My favourite player, a rising star, had got to the final, so I wanted to see him. At the time, I didn't know anyone else who was interested in tennis. All my friends preferred football, so I went on my own. I set off really early to make sure I got there on time. But I ended up being too early, and I had to wait for 2 hours for the match to start. It didn't matter though, because this meant I got one of the best seats, right at the front, in the middle of the court. I was delighted about that. Other people gradually started arriving. The seats filled up, and we waited expectantly for the players. When the match started, it soon became clear that I was practically the only person supporting Jean Martin. Most people were there to support the other guy, who had won the previous 2 years and was the favourite to win this year too. Every time Paul Fernandez won a point, the crowd erupted into applause, but I sat silently, getting more and more anxious. Martin lost the first set, but then there was a dramatic turnaround. He suddenly seemed to find some self-belief, and he started to win. That's what I love about tennis. It's a battle of the mind as much as the body. I find it interesting to see how some players may be highly skilled, but don't have the mental strength to win. Martin obviously did have this strength, and Fernandez was slowly falling apart. The atmosphere was electric. Martin showed off his amazing skills, hitting ball after ball straight down the line. Martin served for the match. You could have heard a pin drop. When he served an ace, the crowd went wild. Although they had begun by supporting his opponent, they had grown to respect him for his cool head and control of the ball. When he was presented with a trophy, he cried with joy.
Do you play tennis yourself?
Yes, I'm a keen tennis player. I joined a club about 2 years ago and play all the time.
What are the best ways to keep fit?
The best way to keep fit is to do exercise that raises your heart rate. The heart is a muscle and has to be worked like any other muscle. So golf, in my opinion, is not the best form of exercise. Something like jogging or swimming or surfing is much more beneficial.
Do you think most people consider exercise a chore, or do they find it fun?
I think most people feel it is something they should do. That is a mistake as far as I'm concerned, because the best way to exercise is not to think about the fitness aspect and just have fun. You can exercise without even noticing you're doing it if you play volleyball with your friends, or go snorkeling, or go for a long walk on a sunny day, or something like that.
What is the most popular form of exercise in your country?
I would say the most popular form of exercise is going to the gym. I'm in two minds about the gym as a way to keep fit. On the one hand, it is convenient, but on the other hand, a gym is a very controlled environment, somewhat lacking in imagination and spontaneity.
Healthy lifestyles.
Do you think people in your country are less healthy than they used to be?
Yes, definitely. I would argue that the invention of TV has led to people being much too sedentary. I know some people who refuse to have a television because they think that without one they are much more likely to keep active. It's all too easy to become a couch potato. Also, most people work in offices, so they just sit in a chair all day long and only move to go to the photocopier. That's very unhealthy. People used to work the land, and so be on the go from morning till night. Obesity was unknown then, except among the super rich, I imagine.
How can we encourage young people to stay healthy?
Parents should set a good example, but I strongly believe that schools have a crucial role to play. Not only can they offer a wide range of sports for children to play, they can teach them about eating a balanced diet and the negative effects of eating junk food and not exercising. If children don't hear all this from home, they have to hear it from somewhere, and I would argue that it's the school's responsibility. Once they get a taste for playing sports, they will love the sense of achievement it can give you and the feeling of camaraderie with your teammates. And then, hopefully, they won't ever want to stop playing sports.
Should governments intervene to force people to be healthier?
I'm highly sceptical of the idea that governments should force their citizens to be healthy. People ought to be encouraged to lead healthy lives, but not forced to. They could, for example, run an ad campaign showing people how to eat a balanced diet, that you need to eat some carbohydrates, some vegetables and fruit, some meat and so on. I think most people don't know that, but I'm unconvinced that trying to force people into healthy habits would work. Because when bullied like that, people tend to resent it and react by sticking even more firmly with their unhealthy lifestyles. The one area where I strongly believe legislation is necessary is with smoking. Smokers can harm others through passive smoking, so they should not be allowed to smoke in public places. In fact, this has just recently been outlawed in my country.
Track 15.
My name's Mubarak, and I'm from the United Arab Emirates. My favourite subject at school was maths. I really loved it, I think primarily because I liked being able to use logic to work out answers, rather than having to speculate and theorise, as you often do in art subjects. I went on to study for bachelor's and master's degrees, both in mechanical engineering at Leeds University in England. I chose that subject because, although I was more keen on maths, engineering is more practical. My decision to study in Britain was motivated by the high prestige of British qualifications back in my home country. The tuition fees are very high for foreign students, but my family paid them for me. I found the course very challenging. English is, of course, not my mother tongue, so I found some of the lectures and seminars hard to follow. As a result, I failed my first-year exams. I had to retake them all, but then, thankfully, I passed. I always did well in my coursework because I could take time to research the topic and check my English. My dream job would be to work as a mechanical engineer for the United Arab Emirates Army. The reasons are that such a job carries high prestige, it would be interesting, and there would be good job security. If I got such a job, I would probably have it for life.
Do you work or are you a student?
I've just finished secondary school. I got the best results in my year, so I'm hoping to get a scholarship to study English literature.
Why did you choose that course?
Because I love literature. I love getting lost in a book. I mean, it's a form of escapism for me. But I also enjoy learning about the historical and cultural contexts that influenced a work, and I'll have ample opportunity to learn about these things at university.
What was the most difficult thing about your studies?
At secondary school, the most difficult subject for me was chemistry. I can't stand science, and I would dread every lesson. I struggled in chemistry lessons, and I had to work really hard to pass my exam. For some reason, I just couldn't remember all those chemical symbols and equations, no matter how long I spent revising.
Track 17.
My dream job would be to teach children to sail. I have some qualifications, in skippering, for example, but it's very likely I would need more, such as a teaching certificate from the Yachting Association. I have some of the right experience in that I've been sailing a long time. I'm confident in handling a yacht, and I've dealt with many minor crises in my time, like getting trapped in storms and saving someone who'd fallen overboard. It's true that I've never taught anyone, but I don't think that would be a problem, provided I was given adequate training. I'm quite good with people and can explain things clearly. I imagine the job would involve encouraging youngsters to try sailing for the first time, and also teaching them that by working together as a team, they could discover they have hidden strengths. The most difficult thing would be having sufficient patience when the children didn't do as they were told. I suspect it would be frustrating if they didn't realise that the rules were there for their own safety. Why is it my dream job? It's my dream job because I love sailing. It's been my hobby for decades, and I'd like to work in a nice, warm climate where all I'd need to worry about was making sure I had suntan lotion on and enough to drink.
When did you learn to sail?
I learned when I was a small boy. My dad taught me as he was a very skilled sailor. He taught my brothers and sister too, and we're all very pleased he did.
Education.
Do you think science subjects are more useful than art subjects?
I think they are more useful because they are primarily concerned with practical matters. If you study science, you might, for example, go on to have some kind of technical role in the production of a device, like a computer or a car. However, all great leaders have studied more arty subjects, such as philosophy, history, and economics. This makes them better leaders because they have an understanding of human nature.
Are young people mature enough to choose what to study themselves, or should their parents decide for them?
I think success in studying comes from being highly motivated to study a specific subject area. Therefore, the student should choose which subject they're interested in. By way of an example, I had a friend who studied science A-levels because his parents pushed him down that route, but he hated it and so didn't get very good results. He still graduated and managed to get a place at university where he studied law, and he became a top student because law was what he was interested in.
In your country, does having a university education help you into a better career?
Yes, it does, as all top companies recruit graduates for their top positions. Therefore, you get a better start. However, it's fair to say that a university degree is not everything, and it's what you do with it that matters. You can have a degree yet still get overtaken by somebody who isn't university educated, but who gets promoted over you because they work harder.
Motivation.
Do you think older or younger workers are more motivated?
Younger workers should be more motivated because everything in their job is new to them and therefore exciting, and they have to build their career, which is all ahead of them. Older workers have a tendency to think they've seen it all and very often just wait for retirement. I do know of at least one older person who's made a point of retiring on a high and is therefore highly motivated to get a project delivered to a very high standard before he retires. But no matter how fascinating your job is, when you reach the end of your career, I suspect you mainly focus on your impending retirement.
How can managers increase motivation among their workforce?
Allocating the right tasks to the person with the right skills, but making every task slightly different so that they learn every time. That can lead to an increase in motivation. It's about making the job interesting, but without drowning staff in too much new information each time. If they see that they can progress steadily and meet the challenges set, then they'll stay motivated.
Are people more motivated if their job involves helping others?
Although my job doesn't really involve helping people, just training them, I'd hazard a guess that youth workers, for example, find it very rewarding helping a young person to achieve their personal goals, or overcome a personal challenge. I can imagine, too, that it gives a counsellor tremendous job satisfaction to know that if they weren't there to listen to their patients' problems, things would probably not turn out as well for them. So yes, although it's impossible for me to know for sure, I'd say people with those kinds of jobs take more pleasure from their work and are motivated by something more profound than just money. Where I come from, it's almost always sweltering. Ours is an arid climate, and in most parts of the country, precipitation is very low. Can you believe that in the summer, the temperature can exceed 50 degrees C?
Speaker 2. Sometimes I feel like it's constantly drizzling here, and it generally feels damp. In fact, right now it's pouring down. That does mean we have the most beautiful, lush, green countryside though, and the climate is temperate, so we don't suffer from any extreme weather, thank goodness. Speaker 3.
The weather here is notoriously changeable. People often think our country is very, very cold all the time, but ocean currents keep our climate fairly mild, considering the latitude. I don't mind our winters, which are bearable as long as you wrap up warm, but I don't like our summers because it never gets above 25 degrees C.
Tell me about your country's climate.
We have an extreme climate. Our winters are absolutely freezing, and our summers are boiling hot. That means that the people, the houses, the transport system, everything needs to be prepared to cope with every kind of weather.
What's your favourite kind of weather?
What I like most is hot, dry weather. I love being able to sit outside on a balmy evening with a drink, rather than cooped up inside like you are in the winter.
Does the weather influence your mood?
Yes, it certainly does. It's the rain that influences my mood the most. I hate it when it's raining. It makes me feel so down. It's hard to go out without getting soaked to the skin anyway, and the sky is so dismal and overcast. It's miserable.
Is it worse to feel too hot or too cold?
Well, I suppose if it's too cold you can just wear more layers. But nevertheless, I prefer to be too hot. At least it means the weather is good, and you can always go for a swim to cool down. What I really can't stand is being cold and wet. That's the worst combination, and it makes me worry that I'm going to catch a cold.
My favourite season is most certainly the summer, which is officially from June to September. I say officially because the reality is that we generally get a very short summer, in that the weather is only really summery for a few weeks a year. The rest of the season merges with the others, being rather cold and rainy. The highest the temperature gets is about 30, and when it gets that high, people start complaining because they're not used to such heat. This irritates me, to be honest, because my view is that we so rarely have hot weather that we should just appreciate it and enjoy it when we do. In this country, and especially in my region, you can't rely on good weather in the summer. I've been to many outdoor events like weddings, concerts, barbecues and so on, where the organisers were optimistic about the weather, but where it rained non-stop. Of course, you can't blame them. If you can't organise an outdoor event in August, when can you? In the summer, I typically go abroad on holiday to places where scorching sunshine is practically guaranteed. This is because I'm a sun worshipper and like to get a good tan. Having sun on my skin makes me feel healthy, though I am fully aware of all the dangers associated with too much exposure to the sun. When I'm at home, I like to have friends over for barbecues, and we stay out in the garden all evening until it gets too chilly, or until it's time for them to go home. The reason summer is my favourite season is that sunshine makes me happy. It's a scientific fact that it releases endorphins. In fact, during the winter, many people in my country use light boxes which recreate the light of the sun. You have to sit and stare into the light, and it is intended to lift your mood. In the summer, though, you don't need such gadgets. You can just go outside, sit in the sun, and get a natural energy boost. It's wonderful.
Do you dislike the winter?
No, I don't. All the seasons have something to offer. In the winter, it's nice to snuggle up inside with a mug of hot chocolate. Are people in your country concerned about protecting the environment?
To be honest, no. I think the middle and upper classes are more interested in earning as much money as they can in order to buy as much stuff as they can. And there are many people in my country who live below the poverty line, and they quite literally can't afford to worry about the environment when they're struggling to put food on the table and just survive.
Does the responsibility for protecting the environment lie with governments or with individuals?
In my view, the responsibility lies with all of us. However, individuals, at least in my country, aren't taking action of their own accord, and nor are businesses. They're just out to make a profit. Therefore, it falls to governments to force people to be more green. For example, by fining companies that release toxic waste into our rivers, or incentivising us to recycle.
Does it help to educate young people on being green?
Almost certainly it does, because it is the next generation who will have to take on the huge burden of saving the planet. This generation isn't doing enough, and is too worried about money. So I pray that the next one will see the urgency of the situation, and the way to get them to see that is to teach them about the repercussions of a polluting lifestyle such as ours.
Pollution.
What effects does pollution have on the environment?
I hardly know where to start. Pollution in the oceans kills fish and so unbalances the ecosystem. Pollution on land means that whole areas become unfit to live on or to farm. Habitats are destroyed, which leads to the extinction of hundreds of animal and plant species.
Do you think we pollute more now than we did 50 years ago?
Well, yes, overall. I'd say, though, that richer countries pollute less themselves but export their pollution elsewhere, by which I mean that they consume foreign products that have a large carbon footprint. It has become fashionable to be green in wealthier nations, especially Western ones. So people make an effort to cycle to work and recycle their waste. However, it's quite a shallow attempt at being green, in my opinion, because they still live in big houses using lots of energy and go on holidays abroad, leaving a trail of pollution in their wake.
What do you think will happen if we don't reduce current levels of pollution?
I read an article recently that claimed if we don't change our ways, we will need a second planet to meet our needs as early as 2030. It's frightening to think that we're that greedy, and I'm sure I'm just as guilty as the next person. I do hold out some hope that things will get so bad that we will realise we really must act, and we will completely change our destructive habits just in the nick of time. If not, the planet will surely become uninhabitable.
My mother tongue is Hungarian. It is spoken in Hungary, and it is a minority language in the surrounding countries, especially Romania. It is not part of the same language family as European languages like English, French, German or Russian. It is a Uralic language, distantly related to Finnish and Estonian. Because Hungarian is not a widely spoken language, if you want to get on, you have to speak a foreign language. Unsurprisingly, the most popular second language among Hungarians is English, the global language. Like most of my friends, I am multilingual. As well as Hungarian, I'm fluent in English and German. I can also get by in Italian, and I did an evening course in Spanish a few years back, but I'm a bit rusty now. I seem to pick up languages quite easily, helped, I'm sure, by the fact that language teaching in Hungary is so good. It has to be, given that no one speaks our language but us.
What's your mother tongue?
My mother tongue is Portuguese. It's predominantly spoken in Brazil, but also in other parts of the world, such as Portugal and Africa.
What other languages do you speak?
Although I grew up in Brazil, I can also speak Italian because my mother and one set of grandparents are Italian, and I grew up hearing the language all around me. I'm really proud to be bilingual, and I'd like my children to be bilingual too.
What do you think is the best way to keep in touch with friends?
It depends how far you are from your friends. If you are geographically close, you should meet up face to face. Long-distance communication can cause misunderstandings and resentments to build up. When you write, you only have the words on the page, not body language or tone of voice.
Do people keep in touch differently now compared to 50 years ago?
Well, of course. People use the internet now and mobile phones. I'm quite young, but even when I was a teenager, nobody in my friendship circle had a mobile. Now it's seen as indispensable, and you would feel left out if you didn't have one. But, as I said before, I think it's better to meet up with friends than to communicate using technology. There's much to be said for communicating in so-called old-fashioned ways.
A language I would like to learn is Spanish. It's used not only in Spain, but also in many other countries, and I believe it's one of the most widely spoken languages in the world. So it's a language that is definitely worth knowing. It would be useful to me for business purposes. Also, Spanish culture is becoming more and more influential internationally. It is, for example, overtaking English as the most widely spoken language in certain parts of the USA. It is influencing music and art. So, all in all, I think it's a handy language to know. I doubt it would be too challenging for me to learn Spanish, because it is a Latin language, just like my mother tongue, French. I think Spanish vocabulary would be easier for me to acquire than Spanish grammar. I understand the grammar is one of the most difficult things about the Spanish language. I would use Spanish primarily when going on holiday. I've been to Spain many times, and I always find that if you go off the beaten track, it's difficult to find people who speak English. You get very good at speaking with your hands, and it's difficult to really engage with people and understand the culture if you don't speak the language. Speaking Spanish would undoubtedly make my holidays a lot easier and more enjoyable. On top of that, the company I work for has an office in Madrid, and it would also be very interesting to be able to work there. I would enjoy the challenge and the exposure to a new culture. It would be such an exciting opportunity. To make the move, though, I'd obviously need to be able to speak Spanish. Luckily, my company would most likely sponsor me to have Spanish lessons.
Where have you been in Spain?
I've been to Spain many times, and each time I did a road trip. One trip was in the north of Spain, travelling from France across the Pyrenees, through the Basque country and all the way down to Madrid.
Is it considered important in your country to learn foreign languages?
More than just important, it's considered essential. The English poet John Donne said, "No man is an island." And I think in this day and age, that is also true of countries. We are all intricately connected. A country that wants to do business abroad and export its goods has to know how to communicate with foreigners, and that means speaking foreign languages.
What, in your opinion, is the best way to learn a language?
Undoubtedly, the best way is to go and live in a country where the language is spoken as a native language. But that is not enough. I have friends who have done just that, but they stuck together with people who spoke their language, and so they hardly learnt anything. You have to immerse yourself completely in the language and the culture. This takes courage, but is well worth the effort. One of my friends went to study in England and got an English boyfriend. Her English improved dramatically in just a few months. So, arguably, that's the best way.
Why are some people seemingly better at learning languages than others?
It's true that some people seem to pick up language really easily. Being bilingual from a young age certainly helps, because the more languages you speak, the more easily you acquire a new one. Another major factor is motivation. Two people can study the same materials for the same number of hours, but the person who is more motivated will learn more and remember better what they learned. I really believe that the more you care about learning a language, the more effortlessly you will pick it up.
How do people in your country feel about English being the world language?
I don't think most people feel anything exactly. They just see it as something inevitable. They don't fight it because that would just leave them trailing behind other countries that embrace English as the global lingua franca. Not learning English would leave us economically disadvantaged.
Do you think the culture of English-speaking countries, as well as the English language, dominate the world?
The rise of the internet has certainly increased the dominance of English, and therefore also the spread of English and American ways of seeing the world. I think we are all expected to conform. Also, the majority of young people in my country like to watch American films and listen to American music. It's considered trendy to do so. So, yes, I would definitely say that the culture of English-speaking countries holds much sway all over the world.
Why do you think people feel it is important to continue speaking their local languages?
There's a backlash in some quarters against the spread of English. One way this is expressed is by the insistence of maintaining local languages. A local language is more than just words. It links a community with its past, with its heritage. And so if you stop speaking your language, you lose a part of yourself.